Joining me to discuss that and a lot more from Washington is USA Today senior politics reporter Heidi Presbella and Joel Payne, the former director of African-American advertising and paid media for the Hillary for America campaign. All right, I want to go around the horn here. I want to get both of your reactions to what you just heard and what role you think Donald Trump's business dealings will play in these hearings. Heidi, let's start with you.
This is exhibit A that Elizabeth Warren was trying to make of just how his sprawling business empire is going to be a constant theme throughout his administration, given the decision that he's made to not divest. And I think it was about much more than just this pointed question that she was trying to ask about whether HUD policies will help Donald Trump. It was to demonstrate how his decision to not divest is going to cut across a lot of his policies.
Joel, what did you think?
I think Heidi is spot on. I think that this is not about Ben Carson, not about him as HUD secretary. I think it's really just about how the Democrats plan to use Donald Trump's business dealings as a really important flashpoint to show that he has not done all the things that he needs to do. He has not settled into convention the way that previous presidential candidates and president-elects have done.
All right, let's talk about Obamacare. Despite not having a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act yet, the Senate took the first step to repeal the law, but the president-elect seems to think both actions should happen simultaneously. Take a listen.
We're going to be submitting, as soon as our secretary is approved, almost simultaneously, shortly thereafter, a plan. It'll be repeal and replace. It will be essentially simultaneously. It will be various segments, you understand, but will most likely be on the same day or the same week, but probably the same day, could be the same hour.
All right, so Heidi, let me ask you, I mean, you know how the legislative sausage is made. How realistic is Mr. Trump's time frame here?
Well, I think it's good that he realizes the perils, both practical and political, of doing repeal without replace. But at the same time, they're making a lot of promises that it will be less expensive, that it will cover the same number of people, and that it will even be far better. I don't know how you do that when you're talking about removing essentially the funding mechanism, and this is what they cannot come up with here is because they want to remove this funding mechanism. I mean, there's some ways that they've talked about, but we really haven't gotten a clear answer as to how they're going to fulfill all of those goals while also removing the funding. It's possible that they could create a market-based model that creates more choice, but more choice doesn't necessarily mean it remains affordable for more people, and that's the problem.
Joel, let me ask you, today the Inspector General's office announced it has opened an investigation into the Justice Department and the FBI for its actions related to Hillary Clinton leading up to the 2016 election. What do you think, first of all, about that decision, and what do you think the end game might be here?
Well, look, the end game, I think, is to demonstrate that, that Mr. Comey did take steps that were, out of step with what FBI directors have done in the past. There's no doubt, I think we all know, that this had a tremendous impact on the election, and this had a tremendous impact on how voters viewed both candidates. I think the Inspector General is attempting to get to the bottom of what happened and what was behind that action. But I think from my perspective, certainly as a former Hillary Clinton campaign staffer, it feels a little bit, too late to the party. It feels like this is something that we would have wanted to happen a few weeks or a few months ago, obviously.
Heidi, let me ask you, what are you hearing about reaction to this announcement from both Republicans and Democrats?
Honestly, there's, I think, agreement on both sides that there should be an examination because there are grievances on both sides. I think that the Democratic grievances are absolutely more serious given the timing. And I think that this is actually going to be something that where Rudy Giuliani's name could come up again, because I know from my reporting on the Clinton campaign that there was a lot of concern about what was happening in that Manhattan FBI office that was pushing for Comey to make an announcement about the new emails that have been found. I also know that the warrant that they used, which was the basis for examining those emails, was awful thin. If you remember at the time, Elaine, there was a lot of speculation that, gee, they must have something really solid for the FBI director to come out and do this in such a dramatic fashion, because it was such a departure from FBI protocol. Remember, they're under strict orders not to do anything that could unduly influence an election. That's why you had the Attorney General warning him against it. And I think that they're going to be looking pretty closely at that New York office, what was going on there.
Interesting. All right, last question here. Today, the White House ended a decades-long policy called Wet Foot, Dry Foot. The policy essentially lets undocumented Cubans who were able to make it to the U.S. stay without a visa. With just a week left in office, what do you think the president is doing here, Joe?
Well, it seems pretty obvious that the president has decided that Cuba is a central part of his legacy and has decided to be very aggressive. Even if you go back to when Fidel Castro passed away and the statement that the White House put out, which caused a lot of stir. This is not making the president a lot of friends, even in his own party. I saw Bob Menendez put out a statement that was very negative on the president's actions today. But it's pretty clear that the president has decided that this is a central part of his legacy and that he's going to stake a lot of his legacy on what happens in Cuba.
All right. Heidi Presbella and Joel Payne in Washington, thank you both for joining us.